Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hey everybody, Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Greg Crabtree, the author of Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits, who shared with us insights on the economic state of small business in 2023, and Andrea Houston, an entrepreneur for over 30 years who is focusing her time and energy to raise up female leaders through their stories and voices with her published books and her Lead Like a Woman podcast. So go check out these episodes in our back catalog on your favorite podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit-maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO Group and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com. I was able to meet today's guest when I was part of an entrepreneur mastermind hosted by Chris Mandarino. Chris is a seasoned startup advisor who more recently founded the Amelia Network, a cohort of like-minded women CEOs who are on a mission to scale their businesses to 20 million and beyond. To learn more about Chris and the Amelia Network, go to cmadvisorygroup.com/Amelia-network. Today's guest is Lindsay Pedersen. Lindsay is a brand strategist and the author of a best-selling book, Forging an Ironclad Brand, which I happen to have a copy right here for anybody who's watching on video. And then you'll also see I have another copy behind me in my bookshelf. I have two. So one for home and one for the office. But Lindsay is known for her methodical, framework-driven approach to brand building. Lindsay has advised companies from burgeoning startups to national corporations. Her background as a P&L owner at Clorox fostered in Lindsay a deep appreciation for using brand as a North Star for increasing the company's value. Lindsay arms leaders with an empowering understanding of brand and an ironclad brand strategy so they can grow their businesses with intention, clarity, and focus. Lindsay, thank you for being on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm just very excited to have this conversation today because, you wouldn't think that a CFO loves talking about brand, but I do. I've got lots of questions, and I think it's going to be really awesome for our audience to just really do a deep dive. And you have so much experience, and I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, and it's my favorite thing to talk about. So
perfect. Well, let's talk about it. So I would love to start with really what, brand can mean 1,000 different things. So when you say brand and you're describing it to people, how do you describe it?
Yeah, it's so true. The word brand is kind of problematic in some ways because it does have so many guises and meanings. And so I always like to start the conversation with what do we mean by brand? What does brand mean? And to me, brand is the thing that a business stands for inside the head of that business's audience. So it's like, what is the meaning or set of associations that the audience holds when they think of a business? That's kind of what a brand is. And a brand strategy is simply the deliberate exercise of defining what you want that meaning to be so that you can be proactive in conveying that meaning with everything that you do as a business. So every business has a brand, whether it's passively or actively created is the question. And so if you have a brand strategy, it's because you've come to it with a deliberate, kind of safe psychological space to decide what's going to be the most fruitful meaning for your business to stand for.
I like that because it's so much more than just like, oh, we have these colors, we have this logo, like we've done our branding, quote unquote. It's so deep, and it's really thinking about the customer more so than us. Like, I think a lot of times as company owners, we try to like put things out into the world, or we try to create something we think people are going to buy it, but it's really like, what does the customer think we are at the end
Yeah.
of the day? Is that
Yeah, because that's where the value exchange is, right? Is with the
Mhm.
customer. Whoever is you're asking to part with their hard-earned money or time or emotional energy, they're the ones who are giving something to you, or you're making an ask of them. So the philosophy is, what's the thing that's going to make that a really attractive exchange for the customer, right? So that you have a thriving business, so that
Mhm.
you're giving them something that they want, so that you have healthy margins and you have high loyalty and all of the things that make our financial picture healthy. um, if you start with what the customer wants and then work your way back, you're more likely to come up with that kernel that is going to create that kind of generative space. It's what allows both the customer and the business to thrive, is to
Mm.
sort of identify that intersection.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Um, so you were a brand manager at Clorox,
Yeah.
which is, obviously, I think we all know the name. And
Yes.
it's a product-based business, so consumer product.
Yeah.
Um, but our audience here is really B2B service companies for the most part. And
Mhm.
do they need to be thinking about brand differently than
Mm,
maybe a traditional like consumer product brand?
yes and no. I mean, I think the the yes part is that brand is simply a tool, right? Like brand strategy or is just like any leader's tool. You can use it or not use it, but it's my kind of premise is that it's going to create value, it's going to create more focus for a business and therefore more economic value,
Hmm.
to have that. So yes, any business that has a relationship with customers has a brand, and therefore um, that the utility of the brand strategy is going to be present for any business. Um, on the others, I think that so there's consumer products, so like a physical, tangible good, like Casey Masterpiece barbecue sauce, which was one of the products at Clorox that I ran. Um, Physical products, it might be more obvious that you need a brand for that, because like you have to have a package, you have to have
Right.
kind of the obvious attributes of a brand. Um, and in fact, in the world of consumer packaged goods, in particular, physical goods, we're really good at brand in consumer goods because our products are so similar to our competitors' products. And so brand is our primary source of differentiation. Like
Yeah. Okay.
we have to be good at it. Um, but the idea of like, if you think about it, it's not terribly different to ask a person to buy a bottle of barbecue sauce or laundry detergent than it is to ask them to pay some of their money for a service.
Yeah.
In both cases, you're asking for them to part with something scarce to them. So there's got to be something at both a functional and an emotional value to them to make it worth it. So
Right.
it's sort of like saying, like, why should a customer say yes? That's
Yeah.
sort of what a brand strategy answers. So if you have customers, whether they're buying a physical good or a service, whether it's a small price point or a large price point, um, being really articulate about the value that they will be getting as a result of paying their money or time for it is going to make it easier for them to say yes.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, because, yeah, I mean, take my business, for example. We provide CFO services, right? I mean, there's 1,000 different places you can go for CFO services. Your CPA might be able to provide them, or, other CFO agencies, or all the kind of independent people who've been in finance, they might be able to provide CFO services. But like, why do they come to work with us
Yeah.
specifically? So
Yeah.
that's been a big part of like our work at Clara, is like trying to figure out like, why would somebody come and work with us? Hopefully we're attracting the right people, but what is it that makes our service different? So that's a big part, because Yeah. And we're not the cheapest option either. So, we want to be able to make sure that we're bringing people in. So I feel like I actually, it's funny talking about like differentiation. I have Michael Porter on my desk as well. So, good,
Yeah.
two good
Oh
resources
wow,
right here.
that's a first for me to have my book right next to Michael Porter's. What a
Well, we're gonna put
compliment.
it here again. You need both. But yeah, I mean, this is like interesting, but differentiation is like one of the main ways that you can be competitive in any kind of market. So I love the brand differentiation when people for services in particular, because you want to attract the right people and the right people you want working with you, that you're providing that value.
Yeah, I mean, really, differentiation is the only way that you can have a valuable business.
Yeah.
Because if you're if what you're selling, just kind of going back to like getting inside the head of the customer who's looking at the array of options, if there's no difference among the options, then they are going to resort to price. They're going to compare on
Yes.
price.
Yeah.
And then it's a race to the bottom on margins.
Exactly.
So none of us want to go there. So differentiation is the opposite of commoditization. And
Hmm.
so the more different you are, the more potential your business has to have a lot of economic meaning, right? Like it's the only way. You have to.
Hmm.
You can't not be different. And so brand differentiation really it's sort of like it's like at the intersection of corporate differentiation and like customer facing differentiation. They're really kind of the same thing, I suppose
Hmm.
you could say. But of course, you have to be different. If you're not different, you don't get good margins. And if you don't have good margins, you don't have a future as a business. And so, brand is, to me, it's actually the most sustainable source of differentiation there is, because ultimately, everything else can be copied. Patents expire, um, product innovations obsolesce, but you can't copy somebody else's brand. If it's done well, it's so specific to them, it's not copyable. So it's almost like by definition differentiated.
Mm. Oh, I love that so much. It's so good. Because I think that's, oftentimes, especially in small business, I think that people are trying to think like how they can be competitive on price. And I'm always encouraging, like, let's not try to differentiate ourselves by being the price, cheaper option. But we obviously have this other option of being specific enough that we are attracting the right people and we are able to charge the value that we're providing as well. Um, I think like oftentimes like CFOs especially might be considering branding as like maybe a fluff piece that maybe they don't need, or they see it just as like a marketing, like an add-on to marketing, and sometimes don't see the value in doing the work of like really investing in branding on the front end. I am not one of those CFOs. So I'm like definitely wanting to have this conversation. I see the financial impact on our companies that have really good, solid brands, and then the ones that are sort of languishing in not really having anything very specific. So, and I watched one of your videos and you had this quote where you said the role of brand strategy is to provide profitability and sustainable growth for your business, which we love. So, can you help just kind of really explicitly break down like how does that really happen? How can we create that profitability through our brand and then also, increase value and sustainable growth?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I love that.
Mhm.
Um, I think that so this is sort of what we were saying before. This like the fundamental truth of commerce is that differentiation is how you have a sustainable business. And so hopefully you're going to harness all your sources of differentiation as a business. Maybe you have a first mover advantage. Maybe um, you have a real estate advantage or a regional advantage, or maybe there's a famous person who publicly uses your service or product. Those are all sources of differentiation. Patents, copyrights, those can be sources of differentiation. um, all of us have a brand, so we may as well make that a source of differentiation too. Um, when you have differentiation, whether it's from a brand or from something else, a real estate advantage or a patent advantage, when you have differentiation, you're going to have higher willingness to pay among your customer audience. So you as a business elevate your own pricing power. So differentiation, and we'll just call it brand differentiation for the purposes of this, allows you to get your audience away from the price conversation and more interested in what it is that they're going to get as a result of saying yes to you. And price is not the lead horse in the discussion, because that's never going to end well for you if price is the lead, unless you're Amazon, right? Unless, or, if you're Walmart, or if you have the lowest cost structure in among all of the alternatives that your customer has, then have at it with being a price play. But that's one player in any industry or vertical.
And for this audience, I mean, there's none of us are operating at that volume to make that cost structure make sense. Otherwise, they'd probably just be gobbled up by some larger consulting firm or something, and they'll be out and gone. So I can't even imagine that price should be for any of our audience. Like, I think we would pretty much say 100% none of you should be competing on price.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason is you don't have a right to win on price. You're not going to have, you don't have the lowest cost structure.
Yeah.
So you can't win on it. So why even go there, right? Like, why not change the game to something where you can win, where you bring something that only you can bring. And what that does is it allows for the value to come from something other than low price, which is good for you and it's good for your customer. So it's interesting because the way that I love that I'm talking to you, a CFO, about this, because I love to go into the economic reasons for brand.
Yeah.
If you think of it as a pretty, visual varnish on your product, you're sort of losing its whole power. I mean, it's not unimportant that it looks pretty. That's sure. But brand is really about differentiation, which is about pricing power. It's also about loyalty. So you think of how much less expensive it is to keep a customer than to win a new customer. That's from brand. That's from making a meaningful promise to your audience and then delivering on it in a way that only you can. That fosters loyalty, which again fosters a healthy financial balance sheet, because your cost of customer acquisition is not constantly being tested, because you're not always having to go out and get a new customer every time. So that's good for your margins as well. It's good for galvanizing employees or partners, so that you're kind of democratizing your own leadership across the group of people who are all representing your business. If you have really, especially when it's a crystal clear, choiceful, specific brand meaning, then everybody that represents your organization can stand in that and can represent that without you micromanaging them. So that's another way that it helps your margins, right? It scales you as a leader. And then I think that the other one that I would mention is quasi-economic. It's not really economic, but it's just like, why are you even doing this? Like, why are we even alive? why are you even in this business? Having that clarity around what's the unique, specific thing that you bring also just makes it more enjoyable as a leader of this business. You're doing something that it's inherently meaningful because it's something that only you as a group of people can do. And that, I guess I don't know where I would find that on the balance sheet. Maybe it would be under goodwill. Maybe it would be under higher retention of employees, lower attrition costs. But kind of stepping aside from the balance sheet, like, why are you even here? And
Mhm.
I bet that everybody actually does have an answer to that, whether it's stated or unstated. But when you make something that's today it's implicit, when you make it explicit, you make it really overt, you state what that thing is, you unlock so much energy and
Yeah.
power from yourself. And you're not constantly litigating decisions. Should I do this? Should I do that? It actually is much more clear when you have an overt statement of what your business stands for. You don't have to chase things that are good ideas but not great ideas. You
Yeah.
only go for things that are on brand. So all of those things together are totally about the valuation of your business, right? I mean, even the more soulful part that I just mentioned, you just aren't going to have a high value business if you ignore the power of that.
I can I can see how that last part ties directly to the financials because that attracts employees that are like-minded. If you are very explicit about what you're about, why you do what you do, why you serve your clients, why you're in the world, why you exist as a business, that is like a fragrance to potential employees
Ooh,
that
love that word for
I
it,
mean,
fragrance.
yeah, I mean, it attracts, it's kind of this, it's seductive to the people who really want that in their work. And so, like, we're seeing that right now when we're hearing people talk about working with us, they've seen certain things and they're like, yes, this is totally different from my corporate job. I'm really looking to provide more like value to people. I don't want to be a cog in a wheel anymore. I want like purpose and like actually helping people. And so when they can see that that's what we're about, they're easier to align themselves. And we all know for service-based businesses, getting talent is actually almost harder sometimes than getting customers.
Mm.
So it will affect your P&L if
And
you can.
I want to build on that because I love the analogy of fragrance. It'll attract the people that you want to attract, employees, customers, partners, and it'll repel the people that you don't want to attract,
Yes.
employees, customers, partners. And it's really, I, I, I can't emphasize enough how important that is to the long-term value creation of the company,
Yeah.
that you're willing to say no. And again, back to kind of just like saving time because you're not constantly litigating decisions. If you're repelling the wrong, you know, candidates for employee roles or prospects to become customers, the ones that would not be happy in your business and would not increase the value of your business, you're saving yourself a lot of time and heartache. You're also saving them time and heartache.
Yeah.
So the specificity is what allows it to both attract and repel. Because you don't want to have just like try to the first law of marketing is you can't be all things to all people. So let that be a source of power, right? Like by letting your brand both attract and repel, it's only going to be as attractive as it's willing to repel as well. Otherwise
Mm.
it's bland and that doesn't earn that fragrance is not very appealing.
100%. I mean, I think it's that classic thing. If you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're going to be nothing to nobody. Like
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, I find this a lot when I think about referral partners. So if there's people that, we refer tons of bookkeeping work out. People are
Mm,
always asking us for bookkeepers. And it's really hard for me to refer a bookkeeper that's not hasn't kind of said what they're about. So it's very easy for me when somebody says, I do e-commerce and I work with Shopify, people who sell on Shopify and Amazon, like those, very specific things. So anytime I have somebody approach me, I know exactly who to send them to because I know exactly who they work with. Or I have a friend who does like kind of like naturopathic health practitioners only. And so it's very easy for me to say, oh, I think you would be a great fit for my friend Heather over here, but when somebody's like, oh, we do a little bit of everything, I I have a really hard time. Like,
yeah.
who do I send to you? I don't know if they're gonna be a good fit. I don't know if you're gonna take good care of them. Like, if
Yeah.
you do everything for everybody.
It's back to that, the cognitive resources that you're requiring of your audience, you want those to be as low as possible. So if you just described a scenario that expends very few cognitive calories and a scenario that expends a lot of cognitive calories. And the lower the cognitive calories you're asking of your audience, the more likely they'll be able to do what you want them to do. So making it easy, make it easy by being really specific and giving them like a hook, like a mental file folder that allows you to quickly retrieve it. And so if you're bland, you're not giving them a mental file folder, you're making it cognitively taxing, and that's just not going to lead to much action.
Mm, that's great. Cognitive calories. Okay. File that one away, everybody. How much does your business cause your customers or potential customers to expend cognitive calories?
Yeah. I
Question.
mean, and like said another way, the whole purpose of brand positioning, the whole purpose of positioning is to make it easy for your audience to do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Easy. So that's actually the kind of like the neurological reason for brand is to lower the cognitive barriers to make it happen. If you make it easy, you're just more, first of all, it's more empathetic. And second, you're more likely to succeed in their taking the action that you hope that they'll take. So
Mhm.
it's just the generous thing to do.
Yeah.
Whether that audience is somebody like you who is a referral partner, whether that's an employee or a prospective employee, whether it's a customer, make it easy for them to fit inside their heads.
Mm, I love that. So, how does someone know if they have a good brand?
Mm. I'll give you a specific example, then I'll give you a general example. The specific example is if you were to ask 5 or 10 people, stakeholders, whether it's employees or close customers, clients, if you were to ask a handful of people what your brand is, if they all say pretty much the same thing, then you have a really good brand.
Mm,
If you ask 10 people and you get 10 different answers, you don't. And it might be that you haven't done the strategic heavy lifting of defining it to make it overt. It might be that you have done that, but you haven't communicated it broadly. Um, but in either of those scenarios, like that's a pretty good metric.
mm,
And then the more general one is, I mean, the purpose of brand is is whatever is the purpose of your business, right? So if your business goals, if your business is thriving, you probably have a good, it's pretty likely you have a good brand if your business is thriving, if you're meeting your business goals.
mhm,
If you're if you're not meeting your business goals, then brand could be part of could be it's one of many things that you should look at. But gosh, I mean, if a business is like, we're doing exactly what we had hoped for. We're reaching the metrics we want. We're making the change in the world that we want. Then it's unlikely that brand is a problem
mm. Yeah.
because it's a utility. It's there to serve the business.
Mhm,
You don't just have a brand because it's pretty. It's there to work hard to propel you to your business goals.
mhm. Yeah, I'm thinking specifically about some businesses that maybe aren't meeting their profitability goals and they feel
Mm,
like they've, done everything they can and they're looking at dropping more money into marketing or some of these, things maybe, oh, we need another salesperson on the team or something like that. But I'm thinking specifically about these businesses and thinking, I don't know if I could tell if their brand is very strong.
well,
So,
gosh, and before they spend money on marketing or
mhm,
sales, you don't want to, spray and pray with
yeah.
that money, right? So brand is a way to crystallize what's being said in the marketing, what's being said in the sales conversations. If that is if that's really crisp and tight and differentiated, then spending more money on marketing is a better bet than if that clarity isn't there, I wouldn't want to spend more money against the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that for sure. Yeah. Because if you don't really know who you're talking to and what you're trying to say you're about or what you're really offering very clearly, it's like, yeah,
It's a
spray and
poor
pray.
ROI. It's a poor ROI, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
poor return. If you're spending money against something that's vague, you just aren't going to get as strong of a return as if you spend money on something that is really sharp.
Yeah.
That's like a law of physics. So that is before I would spend money on anything, I would go back to how much clarity have we achieved here, and is there lower hanging fruit? Is there something we can do internally to create that crispness before we spend against it?
Yeah.
It's kind of like before adding on to a house, you want to make sure that the foundation is really firm.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Good analogy. I like that. Um, do you think in your mind, is a brand ever complete? Is the project ever
Mm.
done?
Um, well, those okay. So, if a is a brand like a brand is a brand strategy ever complete?
Yes. Yeah.
The project of identifying your brand strategy. I think since when I think of a brand strategy, I'm thinking of identifying the differentiated and customer meaningful idea as
Mhm.
opposed to the copy that brings to life that idea. Most of the brand strategy that's very far upstream, say from messaging, it shouldn't change much, right? It's sort of like um, yeah, if your market changes, then your brand strategy probably should change. If your
Right.
customer need changes, then your brand
Mhm.
strategy should probably change. If your competencies change or some differentiation that you had obsolesces or becomes table stakes in the category, then yes, that would mean you'd have to go back to your brand strategy to identify, okay, now what can we own? Um, but what I usually find is that people are overly eager to keep modifying the brands, the brand or you do a rebrand or a repositioning.
Mm.
Sometimes that's needed, like in the instances I just mentioned. But a lot of times, I think what they really want to refresh is the messaging or the
Mm.
copy or maybe even the visual imagery, maybe some of the stuff, the more downstream stuff should change. So I'll give you an example. um, Volvo's brand positioning has been safety
Right.
since the 1920s, when almost 100 years
Mhm.
of the same brand positioning, and it has not changed
Mhm.
in 100 years. But if you look at their messaging and if you look at their product and you look at all of the things that bring to life what they sell, that's changed dramatically. They've probably had 1,000 marketing campaigns that all bring to life safety in a way that's meaningful in whatever is the era or the context of that campaign.
Mhm.
So safety used to mean that you have a seatbelt in your car,
Yeah.
right? That was safeties. Volvo invented the 3-point seatbelt for the purposes of safety, and that used to be something they could hang their hat on. But
Right.
then everybody has that. And by the way, Volvo opted not to take a patent on the 3-point seatbelt because they wanted other cars to be able to copy that technology so that they would be safer too.
Mm.
So they intentionally allow their features to become not differentiated anymore if it serves their purpose of safety.
Mm.
So every touch point to the customer should continually be, evaluated and breathe new life into it. But do you really need to change safety Because once you do that, once you go all the way back to the heart and soul of the business, to the crux of your differentiation, you got to be really, really careful with going back to your audience and saying, oh, now we're about this,
Mm,
right? Like if safety were like, oh, now we're the sports car.
right.
Like what would that do to the trust that they have built and all of the equity around this idea? So the I'm asked this question a lot, and I think that it's because we're not thinking upstream enough about what brand is. And
Yeah.
but the things that bring to life brand, of course they should change. I mean, like we didn't even have social media 20 years ago.
Right.
And now it's probably the biggest proportion of most of this audience's marketing budget. So absolutely those things should change, but the human need that our business solves, as long as that is still there and as long as we're uniquely able to solve that in our way, then I wouldn't mess with that upstream nugget that is kind of the heart of what your business stands for.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. You talk in the book about the uncommon denominator, which is like that differentiation factor. And I know we don't have time to get into it, but you did kind of like dance around the subject of the uncommon denominator. But what I'm seeing for like Volvo is that like safety was like one of their things, but like they kind of shared and their competitors started to gain some safety, but it still wasn't like it's they're not known the way that Volvo has been known for the safety, and they're innovating on that aspect
Yes,
too. So
that's a really huge point. Just because you own a certain benefit or an uncommon denominator. So in this case, with Volvo, it'd be safety. Just because you own that at a certain moment in time doesn't mean you get to rest on your laurels. You
yeah,
always have to be innovating against that. And um, if you don't, then you lose your differentiation. So you have to continually be innovating against that. But again, and maybe this is another thing that CFOs will like, innovation is expensive, right?
yeah,
So what are we optimizing for with this innovation? Where if we spend money only against safety and we don't spend money against, I don't know, faster or sexier, that's a big savings. Like that's a much higher ROI with our R&D if we keep doing that. And then we continually build up what it means to be what it means to be safe. So 3-point seatbelt, 60 years ago now is side passenger airbags and even pedestrian airbags, I believe, with Volvo. So those things you have to keep doing that. It's not it is a living organism in the sense that you're continually investing in it and responding to market needs
hmm
without um, uh, I'm trying to think like what's an instance like if there were zero deaths from automobiles in the world and then safety no longer was an important consideration for customers,
mm,
then Volvo would have to change their brand. Or maybe they would just, pack up their bags and say, we accomplished what we set out to
right.
accomplish.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. That's what they're out to do. But
Yeah.
until that happens, and safety is important, especially for their target audience, they just have to keep investing against that so that they continue to own it.
hmm Yeah. That's so helpful. I think that, I mean, yes, Volvo's a fantastic example for that, but I think all of us like as we're thinking about our businesses, thinking about what investments do you make to like double down into your differentiation, and how do you continue to grow that piece and not just rely on something you did 5 years ago and say, well, still we're the leaders because we did that thing 5 years ago. How do you continue to like live your values, and also like what's important to you and how you're different. So I love that.
Exactly.
Um, well, gosh, I feel like I could definitely talk to you more about this. Definitely for people who are interested in the book, where can they go to find a copy of your
Yeah,
book?
so Forging an Ironclad Brand, it's available on Amazon and all the online places where you can buy books. I have links on my website, ironcladbrandstrategy.com, that'll take you to indie sellers if you're interested in that. There's also on my website, there's also a book supplement that's like a workbook that you
Mm,
can use as an accompaniment to the book. So you just go on ironcladbrandstrategy.com and you'll be able to get that. Um, and yeah, I would love for listeners to unpack this for a small service-based business, a B2B service-based business, because I think that oftentimes it is the idea of brand is kind of relegated to consumer products or other B2C business, even consumer services. But that actually just becomes even more cool because if everybody in your space is sort of relegating it to brand, but to brand to that's just something that consumer businesses do, then that's even more powerful because now you actually have a tool that others in your space are discounting.
yeah, you can be a early leader in that for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I like the book because it's extremely tactical, and we talked about frameworks at the very beginning, and you have a lot of frameworks, and there are like specific to do things in the book. So I would encourage anybody who's actually looking to like dive into their brand strategy to grab the book and actually do the exercises. I mean, there's brand archetypes in here. There's like characteristics. Like there's lots of very helpful things to think about when you think about positioning the brand. So definitely want to encourage people there. I know we don't have tons of time, but we usually end the segment with a little bit more about your business and how you've grown it and things like that. But we talked a little bit in the pre-show about your business, and right now at Ironclad Strategy, well, it's Ironclad Brand,
Brand
yeah,
strategy.
brand
Yeah.
strategy. That you are the main strategist, and then
Yes.
you have a team surrounding you. Can you tell us a little bit about your team?
Sure. So I have a cadre of part-time people. I've got three other strategists who support me and tend to do a lot of the work that I do before I see it. I have two project managers, one of whom is also an executive assistant. Um, I have two like a web person who can kind of code and another marketing person who helps with copy and editing and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And these are all, I think, to a person. These all of these people have been with me for many years, so it's um, it's pretty stable in that way. But I'm the person. I've kind of made the strategic choice to be the main strategist. So I'm doing the customer, I'm leading the customer through the process.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, I made that decision because it's just more fun for
Yeah.
me. It's not because
Mhm.
it's the better like profit decision. It's what I like to do. It's why I'm doing this work. Is I
Yeah.
like to actually do the strategy, not give it to somebody else to do for me.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's great because you know that about yourself and you're like, this is what I've done and I really enjoy it. And I can create a business to continue doing the parts that I enjoy and get paid for that and do that well. We don't all have to scale our businesses to be a place where we're not interacting with clients. I think sometimes people think that having a service-based business, eventually you need to get out of client work. And
Mm.
that's not always the case. So I love to hear
I
how you've
mean, it's like
chosen.
what it's when you build a small business, there are so many things that are hard about running a small business. You might
Mhm.
as well enjoy the good things about it, which is that you get to decide what you're going to
Exactly. You
do.
have the power. The power's in your hands.
Yeah, you get to the bad news and the good news is that you get to decide.
I love it. Okay, if you were to give yourself a piece of financial advice now compared to when you first started your business,
Mm.
like going out on your own, what do you think you would say to yourself?
I think I would have started earlier. I would advise myself to start sooner with spending money on things that save me energy.
Mm,
Um, so, um, for example, when traveling, upgrade or buy the first class ticket if the same day or the next day you're going to be presenting.
mm,
it's feel like that's so against my like upbringing, like to spend that much money on a plane ticket. But it- the scarcest resource in your business is your own energy. So if you can spend money to lessen that scarcity, it's actually sort of silly not to. I wish that I do that now, but I wish I had started that a lot sooner, because it would have given me more energy, which, by the way, also in turn becomes a flywheel effect to building the business. So
100%.
I wish I had done that more. I mean, maybe don't start with the first class ticket if it feels too indulgent, but like buy the good healthy meal that's going to be more expensive. Splurge
Yeah.
on things. Don't consider it a splurge actually if it's going to increase your capacity.
Yeah. I love that. I think we all can find the things that are the equivalent of the first class ticket. We're not all
Yeah.
traveling across the country,
Right.
speaking either. So,
Right. What's your,
what
yeah,
is
like
that?
what's the equivalent of that? Maybe it's taking the black Uber instead of the regular Uber to get to your destination
Mhm.
when you could use the extra quiet time, or
Yeah. Or
challenge yourself. That's what
yeah,
hiring people
hiring the
sooner.
video editor. So you're not trying to figure out how to do it yourself for
Oh,
100
that's
videos.
1000%. Like start with that. Yeah. Don't, yeah. Yeah. That's,
Don't do that.
d- don't do things that are not in your zone of genius. It's like just, it's a, it's a, it's a poor ROI.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes some maturity, I think, to start to realize that. Like,
And it takes
and
some
to,
courage, right? Like it
yeah,
takes a little bit of trust in your business, but again, like why are we here?
exactly. I love it. I would end on that, but I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Before I ask it, I want to make sure to point people to the website, which is ironcladbrandstrategy.com. And the last question I have for you is, do you have a favorite business book? And if you
Mm.
do, what is it?
I think that my favorite business book, this is the first one that came to mind, is it's called Different.
Hmm.
And it's by Young Me Moon. And it's just called Different. And it's not specifically about brand differentiation, but it's about sort of inspiring your own courage as a business, or as a leader of a business, to lean into what's different, even when that feels hard. And she's a professor, and actually I think she's now dean at Harvard Business School. So it's very rooted in, it's not woo woo different. It's like, this is what allows your business to have a nice, healthy economic value.
Hmm.
And it's also just really enjoyable and kind of contrarian, which I love.
And that's awesome. I have not heard that one yet. So I that definitely will check that out. Okay. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and for being with us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Hannah.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.